Hi, my name's Todd Reimer. I'm the founder of Boots on the Ground Coaching. We're an organization that trains men and women who are leaders and managers, specifically in trades, giving them the tools to lead effectively. 2 days from now, this parking lot I'm standing in front of and the street behind it are going to literally be jam-packed with classic muscle cars. It's called Cruise Weekend in the city I live in. I love the smell of old cars, the interiors. I love the smell of their exhaust. I love the sound of the rumble of an old V8. I love the feel of an old V8 as it lopes a little bit at idle. I love almost everything about them. In the 1950s and 1960s, early 70s, the steering, the suspension, and the brakes were pretty rudimentary though, compared to what we have today. The power was decent in many of the cars that we see from the 60s, especially the muscle cars. But they really don't compare to a lot of the fast cars that are out today. For cars to go faster, something needed to change. What was it? Something needed to happen. Well, the obvious one is they needed a more powerful engine. The technology has gone into making the engines more powerful, for sure. They needed a stronger transmission to handle it. But they also needed the car to change. The steering, the suspension, and the brakes all had to get better so the car wouldn't feel like it was verging on being out of control and in the middle of chaos all the time. And something similar applies to our businesses. If we want them to grow and if we want them to be healthy, the first thing that needs to change is the leader. It's not enough to just change our businesses. The very, very first thing that needs to change is us as a leader. Otherwise, our businesses are going to feel out of control. They're going to feel unstable to the people on our team. It's the difference between a 50-year-old muscle car and the new high-performance muscle car going 120 miles an hour down the highway. The older car can do it, but it's going to feel like it's always verging on just being a little bit out of control. It's going to sway, it's going to move with the bumps more than the new cars will. The new cars are going to feel solid and stable. And it's the same with our businesses. If the leaders haven't grown, the company's growth cannot last. Well, how do we need to grow? How can we grow? You and I have busy schedules. We have lots of demands on our time and on our energy. Well, how do we need to grow for our company's sake? Well, here's how we need to grow. Here are just some examples. We need to grow in our ability to communicate, not just one-on-one as a leader. That's important, that's crucial, but we also need to make sure that our organizations, that our companies, that our crews are passing on the vital information to the right people at the right time in the right way, consistently. We need to be able to grow in our ability to deal with conflict effectively, to lead conflict, not to just let it happen. As leaders, we also need to grow in our ability to give direction to people, to have a vision of here's where we're going, here's how we're going to get there, come with me. As leaders, we need to grow in our ability to set clear expectations for people and to consistently hold them accountable for meeting those expectations. We need to be able to lead change instead of just reacting and responding to it. We need to be able to get ahead of it and lead our people through change. And then we need to grow in our ability to bring people with us. Here's where we're going, here's how we're going to get there, here's what's changing, here's how we're going to deal with it. Now come with me. Let me tell you a story for just a minute. 25 years ago, I was working with teens, and one of the things that we did consistently is plan trips into Mexico, where we would take groups of 10 to 15 teens, and we would build houses for people who needed homes. We would run sports camps, and we would just try to generally help out in the various communities that we would be a part of for that week or two. And I'd gotten good at it. But the day came when someone asked me to put a trip together for 155 people, with 95% of those people being teens. The other 5% were adults. Well, I couldn't be the same person. I initially said yes, and I thought this is a great opportunity. And then I got nervous, and then I got terrified, because this was far bigger than anything I had ever done before. I was dealing with more people, with more families, with far more responsibility than I'd ever dealt with at any one time. I needed to change. I couldn't run a trip like this. I couldn't plan it or carry it out if I was the same person. if I was the same leader I was when I was running trips for 10 to 15 students. I needed to change first. Well, what was the result? After I changed, the trip went off, not without a hitch. There was always issues in a trip like that, but it was successful. 20 years later, I'm still hearing when I meet parents of some of the teens who went on that trip, how it impacted the lives of those students and how beneficial it was. But first, I needed to change. I needed to grow as the leader. That's why I wrote the book, More Than a Hammer, Leadership Tools for the Trades, 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. You can get it in print, in digital format, so you can read it, or you can just listen to it on an audio format. If you don't feel like reading or if you don't have the energy, you don't need to read it. You can listen to it. You see, More Than a Hammer is geared to be very practical. I made it to the point. It's concise. The chapters don't go on and on. They're short and to the point. They deal with real life management and leadership issues that we all face on a daily basis. And how do we deal with them effectively? Secondly, the tools are practical. I help you apply it. There's questions at the end of each chapter that make it relevant to your situation that you're in right now. Unless these principles can become practical, unless we can make them work in our everyday lives, in the way we lead, in our situation, on our crew, in our shop, in our company, they're pointless. They don't make any difference. So I've made it practical using real examples. And third, I've used videos to make it personal. At the end of each chapter, there's a QR code that you can scan. And what it's going to do is it's going to take you to a video that's going to teach the same material, but you're not going to only be able to listen to it, you're going to be able to watch it as well. And I'm going to use a few different examples than I do in the book, just to either expand on what you've already read in the book, or give you the same material from a little different perspective if you don't have time or don't feel like reading that day. Go to www.morethanahammerbook.com. The link is below. Click on there and it'll take you to where you're going to have access to part 1 and part 2 in print form, digital form, a PDF, or in audio format. How's it going to feel to know that you're ahead of the chaos instead of getting caught in the middle of it? Here's how to get ahead of it, to grow yourself and to be ready for high-speed leadership, just like the muscle cars of today. I look forward to seeing you inside More Than a Hammer, Leadership Tools for the Trades.